What is going on, good people? So we are just a day out from some good free practice action in the Austrian Grand Prix. A lot of things coming up this weekend, a lot of things to pay attention to. Ferrari's updates, the battle that we know it as last time with Lando and Max and where McLaren is going to be, and some kind of wondering if McLaren might be not slowing down, but I don't know about everybody else, but I'm kind of wondering if McLaren's about to meet a hang up on their development. But big shout out to Mary Beanie being first in the live chat. Kenny Bugs, I see you. Dave's Quattro, the family member, being second in the live chat. We're looking for our third live chat family member to enter this up. So let's go into this. We got an FIA document that came out, and it is basically going over the new guidelines for the penalty and point system. And we already know that Max Verstappen is a hot topic when it comes to that, because he is one penalty point out from having a race ban. Big shout out to Big Blue Navy. Let's go, third in the live chat. And we got Galactus checking in, one of our moderators right here. So yeah, it is an interesting document. It is going to give us some guidelines. And of course, knowing these guidelines assist us in the season to seeing if they're sticking to those guidelines. Because a lot of times we realize that they don't. A lot of times we realize sometimes that they kind of have a biasness on some ways or some people that they are writing these documents on. But I do think this is very interesting. So we're going to kind of skim over some of the important areas that we know most of the time to happen. Not to say that none of this stuff is important, but we definitely know collisions, overtaking another car, doing the safety car, which is a big thing that just happened this past time with Max and Russell. And we know Max typically likes to overtake during the safety car, kind of putting the pressure on and trying to get a strategical advantage. And of course, also going off track and re-entering the track unsafely, which is, I think, headed by way of Lance Stroll from Aston Martin. So let's just take a look. I think it's interesting. So as it sits right here, we got, sanctions, personal curfews, We got receiving mechanical assistance. We got use of tires. Okay, cool. Now this one right here, leaving the track. Leaving the track is important right here. Okay, so we got leaving the track and gaining a lasting advantage. Also, we got clarification of sporting advantage towards another competitor, which is gained either in time or position of a maintenance of a position. So right here, when it comes to this penalty, they're saying that potential loss of the lap time and or up to a reprimand, qualifying. Now that's in free practice. See, they're going to list it out by what event area. So if it's in free practice, we're talking about a potential loss of lap time and or reprimand. If it's in qualifying, we're talking about a loss of lap or up to a 3 grid place drop right there. Okay, there are no penalty points right now assessed for these situations, okay? And then in a race, we're talking about 10 seconds penalty baseline up to drive through, 5 seconds in case of mitigating circumstances. Now, when it comes to this other situation, it says leaving the track and rejoining unsafely, which we've seen that from Lance Stroll and several other drivers. In free practice, potential loss up to a reprimand, pretty much the same thing across, except for when it comes to the race, it will be a 5-second penalty up to a drive-through, and you could possibly get 1 to 2 penalty points if it's in qualifying or if it's in the Grand Prix, all right? So if it's in the race or qualifying, you're looking up to 1 to 2 penalty points. So that's when things start changing when it comes to rejoining unsafely. All right. So it would seem that a lasting advantage is not as important or to them as rejoining unsafely, because if you leave the track and you gain a lasting advantage and there's not really an unsafe situation, there's no penalty points. But if you leave the track and you rejoin unsafely, you're looking at penalty points qualifying and in the race. All right. Big shout out to Maria Duncan. Big shout out to Darth popping in. So that's on that. Then, of course, we have leaving the track without a justifiable reason, track limits. That is going to have no penalty points across the board, whether it's in free practice, qualifying, and the race. But you will have lap time deleted. You can get a reprimand. Right here is the biggest change, the biggest hand down total, which is a lap deleted, third offense, black and white flag, fourth in each additional 5 seconds. Okay, so There you go with that. Now let's go find our next one. Okay, driving infringements, definitely some importance right here. Unnecessarily gaining a sporting advantage, unnecessarily slow, dangerous manner. So this is something that I think Red Bull will probably have hinted on, trying to get George Russell in trouble when he brake checked or slowed down. Also, Max in the pit lane has done this several times. So right here, they're talking about grid place penalty when it comes to free practice and qualifying. It is the same thing, grid place penalty. But in the race, we're talking about a 10-second penalty as a baseline, a drive through or 10-second stop and go. 10-second stop and go can get pretty hefty. That can get pretty hefty, okay, especially if you got to do something to the car while you're in there. You're 10 seconds before you can even touch the car. Also don't forget to add on the time it takes to get through the pit lane. Also, then you got to add on the time that it might take for them to do whatever they got to do after the 10 seconds has elapsed on the car. So you're talking about anything. You can easily 20 to 30 seconds, 40 seconds, like that could get crazy. 10 seconds before you touch the car. And then if they got to replace a front wing or they're doing tires, we're talking about maybe, 5-8 seconds. And then your drive through the pit lane, which could, in some tracks, could be anywhere from 19 to something. So you're talking about a lot of time that you can be charged right there in that situation. So the next one right here is driving erratically or in a manner which could be deemed potentially dangerous to other drivers or anybody else. So this would fit more along those lines that we were talking about. But we don't see the 2 delta. So right here, you also have the Appendix L, Chapter 4, 2 Echo. You got the breach. You have all the articles that you can look in and get more precise information on this. In this situation, we're looking at a reprimand or grid place penalty all the way through, but there is an asterisk here with penalty points. You're looking at 3 penalty points with asterisk next to it, and then also in the race, 10-second penalty as a baseline, drive through 10 seconds, pretty much the same thing as we had above. All right, so then let's go ahead and go to our next area of interest, because there are several more categories of that: causing a collision, driving with or failing to stop. There's also causing a collision with no immediate and obvious sporting consequences, and an apparent deliberate or reckless intent, which I think, again, would probably be more like Max Verstappen right there. And then also you have forcing a driver off track recklessly, which that's Max Verstappen right there. So a lot of this could apply to Max Verstappen, and he probably needs to be very cautious even in this weekend, because I think he still has the 11 penalty points, one more, and he'll have a race ban. So let's take a look at that. So if we look at, and this is actually Appendix L, Chapter 4, 2 Bravo. The other one above right here is 2 Delta, which we've seen these several times on the FIA documents when it came to the reprimand and the investigation of the incidents. So right here with recklessly, we have anywhere from 2 to 3 penalty points depending on what they're going to do right here. So grid place penalty, 2 penalty points, or grid drop of 10 or more positions, 3 penalty points. Okay. Also going 2 and 3 here, but in the race, things get a little bit more involved. 10-second baseline, 10-second stop and go, 5-second penalty in mitigating circumstances, 2 penalty points, 3 penalty points for the 10 stop and go or any other penalties exceeding 30 seconds. Yeah, that can get taxing right here. That can get taxing right here, fam. That right there can really, any of these can wreck your race, but that certainly will wreck your race. There's no question about that not wrecking your race. That's going to take you far off of whatever it is that you were planning to do or whatever it is that you were going to be on your way to do. It's not going to be a good day for you. So there are several other areas in that one, okay, because as you scroll down, you will see dangerously or with no apparent intent in a manner deemed potentially dangerous, dangerously or crossing the line at the pit exit, which is something else we've seen, right? Crossing the line at pit exit or even enter. So that's going to be Appendix L, Chapter 4, 6 Charlie. It's going to be warning. It's going to be a 3 grid place drop and 2 penalty points. And that's just in free practice. That's in free practice. That's not even in qualifying or the race. You're looking at getting 2 penalty points in free practice if you have this infringement. Another one is the reprimand 3 grid place drop. That's in qualifying. You're still getting 2 penalty points, but when it comes to the actual Grand Prix, 5 to 10-second penalty, drive through or 10-second stop and go with the addition of 1 penalty point or 3 penalty points, depending on wherever it is you land in there. All right, so then next we have flag signaling. Okay, that's cool. Pit lane speed limit. There is another one. This is another area of interest. Several drivers trying to come in, get as much of an advantage as they can, or pretty much not trying to lose any advantage that they've already gained through the course of several laps and then whatever the strategy was. They're trying to go as fast as they can until they hit that white line, get on the limiter, break it, and then not be caught for speeding. But we've seen several times, Lando's pretty good at it. Lando's pretty good at it, coming in pretty hot, braking and locking up because he knows he's probably getting ready to get rid of those tires anyway, crossing that line at just the right amount of speed and on the limiter and not getting penalized. He's also been hit for it before, but I think if I have to look at it, somebody who does it pretty aggressively, and I would say Lando is one of those drivers that does it pretty aggressively and doesn't get penalized for it because he just meets the mark right there on there. So pit lane speeding limits right here. Remember, we're still talking about free practice in this area, qualifying in this area, and we're talking about the race here. So when it comes to that, we got the articles 34, 34, 34. The only difference is 34.7 Alpha Bravo Charlie. Speeding lane and pit lane during reconnaissance laps, pit lane during practice, pit lane gaining an advantage, race less than 6 kilometers, 6 to 15, and 15 kilometers for the distance. Right here, you'll see that there is nothing right here in free practice, qualifying, or the race. Now, if the team is fined in the race, and that's for if you're speeding in pit lane during reconnaissance. So there's nothing really penalizing here in free practice or qualifying, but if you do it in the race, the team is getting fined. There is no penalty points. Now, if you're doing it in the lane during practice, you're getting a fine for both free practice and qualifying, no penalty points, but there's nothing here for the race because they're talking about specifically when you do it in practice. Speeding in pit lane in order to gain an advantage, no fine, right? For free practice, no fine in qualifying, no fine in the race, which is speeding in the pit lane in order to gain an advantage, which is kind of funny right there, but I'm kind of wondering why there's nothing there. But maybe if we ever get a chance to talk to the FAA rep, where they can tell us. But in the race right here, depending is 5-second penalty, drive through, 10-second penalty. Now, let's try to find us something that is a little bit more what we're looking for probably for this weekend, right? And that would be the safety car. Safety car, because we just came out of a situation with George Russell and Max Verstappen in the safety car. All of these are applied this weekend in Austria, which is why this is a hot topic to me, maybe not to everybody else, but it is a hot topic to me. All right, so right here, we got safety car and VSC procedures and formation lap behind the safety car. So entering the pit lane during the formation lap, changing tires during the start of the race, failure to reestablish position, failing to enter the pit lane, and driving unnecessarily slow, erratically manner, and all this other stuff. So right here, you'll just see at the race, start the race from the pit lane is mandatory, all right? 10-second stop and go is mandatory. Start from pit lane, not mandatory, but it's there. And then 10-second stop and go is mandatory. 5 seconds to 10-second penalty, drive through, 10-second stop and go, plus 2 to 3 penalty points there as well. And we'll go further down as we get into free practice and the safety car, ECU behind, all of the good stuff. But there's a lot to go when it comes to the safety car because safety is paramount in this sport. Safety is paramount in aviation, DOT, FAA, transit. Safety is paramount in any sport because we're talking about loss or injury of human life. So safety's always literally, I think safety's gonna most of the time have a large amount and verbiage in there because they want to be very clear, very precise about what you're going to get done, what reprimands are going to happen, and what they're expecting from you to keep the sport safe, keep traveling safe, all of that good stuff. So as we come down here, we'll see we got a lot going in here. Here's goes stopping and resuming the race. Nothing really great there. Pretty much stop and go penalties. Then we go to pit stops, team fine, reprimands for this. We do have this happen quite a bit. Unsafe release from the pit stop. So in free practice, it will be a team fine. In qualifying, it will be a team fine. But in the race, you're looking at 5 to 10-second penalty points plus the drive-through or the drive-through, but no penalty points there. So you got a penalty for 10 seconds, or you're going to have a drive-through, but there are no penalty points there for unsafe release from the pit stop. But I would think that that would change because it says right here, unsafe release from the pit stop where the driver is at fault. reprimand for free practice, reprimand for qualifying, 5 to 10 second penalty, or a drive-through, plus the addition of 1 to 2 penalty points. All right. Releasing a car unsafe conditions during a practice session, team fine or 3 grid place drop. You're not going to see anything in the race because they're illicitly talking about practice. Then you go releasing a car in an unsafe condition during a race, 10 seconds, go mandatory, or team fine if a car retires. So if the car retires before you can get in there, do your 10 seconds, stop and go. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to fine you. You're going to get a nice hefty bill and add a tip to that if you can. So, this one right here is important. I think this is important because if the team doesn't serve the penalty or it's served improperly, within a race penalty, it says incurment of penalties listed under Article 54.3 Alpha to 54.3 Delta are discretion of the stewards if breach is relating to a penalty under Article 54.3 Delta. So we have seen several times in a race or in race seasons where they come in and you might see the rear jack man just happens to touch the car. Nobody is supposed to touch that car in that 10 seconds time frame. Nobody's supposed to touch it. Not the tire, not the jack man, not the mechanic, not the jacks, nothing. If somebody touches that car, they deem that as you started work on the car before that time elapsed, and therefore you did not serve the penalty properly, and then that is where this will come into play. If we go down technical, cool, driver's equipment, there's some pretty hefty fines when it comes to driver's equipment right here. We're talking about 40,000 euros for a driver. Part may be suspended for 12 months. That is crazy. Breach of International Sporting Court Appendix L, requirements of safety equipment for apparel, first offense. This is the first time you do this. Appendix L, Chapter 3, ISC is fined up to 40,000 euros for a driver. Okay, that's crazy. Part may be suspended for 12 months. In qualifying, 40,000 euros. Again, and then in the race is the same all the way across the board, but there is no penalty points. But when you come down here, safety equipment or apparel for your second offense, you're talking about 10,000 more euros of a financial fine. Still no penalty points. Come down here and do it again for your third offense, you're talking about 20,000 more from the initial 40,000, which is 60,000 euros across the board. No penalty points. But I tell you what, if you haven't learned your lesson, an intentional and deliberation of false declaration by competitor or self-scrutinizing form, you're talking about if you're doing this on purpose, if they find out that you have intentionally done this, you are getting stacked up $100,000, 100,000 euros. All right. Yeah, that's getting expensive for just not doing what you need to be doing. So yeah, these things matter. So then we're going to come down to International Sport Court breaches. They have that in here. And then also in this document, they go down here and they start talking about the offenses of the driver's misconduct, abuse of officials by a driver. We don't want officials being abused. We don't want drivers thinking that these people are not important or that you could just talk to them. Or right here, Lance Stroll, any misconduct involving the abuse of officials by a team member, that also. All right. So just because Lance Stroll doesn't happen to throw his steering wheel or his helmet, he hits an official. If it's a team member, you're still getting penalized, and you're still going to get penalized stiffly. They're not taking that as a joke. It's not happening. The fine of 5,000 euros may be increased multiple times or 2 or 3 when the seriousness of the offense warrants a higher penalty. So they do reserve the right to kind of modify that. As you see, denotes maximum number of penalty points depending on the severity of the infringement. So when you saw that asterisk there, that denote there, that's what that means on some of those penalty points. You saw an asterisk on one. Let me see if I can find an example if you missed it. There was like one with 1 penalty point with an asterisk, 2 penalty points with an asterisk. There you go right there. You got 1, 2 penalty points and 3 penalty points with a denote right there. And that's what that denote stands for. And it's always important to look at the information and the key to kind of let you know what the outline is for this. Any changes will be indicated in pink, and you've seen that several times. If you look at the codes or any of the articles, they'll tell you from whatever it was from the previous season to this season if they've made a change. So that is what we got going into this Austrian GP weekend. Penalty point guideline has come out. Max Verstappen is a hot topic on this because why? He has one penalty point, or he's one penalty point away from a race ban. And these things would be important because for us to kind of know, well, are you guys applying the guidelines, applying the points that you should be within the requirements or the instruction that you laid out? If we see something happen and we saw that you outlined it here, it says 2 penalty points or a 5,000 euro fine or a 10-second stop and go. Well, if the driver didn't get that, we'd like to know why the driver didn't get that. And then if we read the document where you list what your findings were, and we see verbiage that pretty much is outlined right here, but you found no further action for a certain driver, well, why and how did you come to that? Because the verbiage you listed in your document pretty much matches right here what you listed in the guideline. And then the reprimand says 10 to stop and go or 2 to 3 penalty points. So we need to know why are these penalty points not being assessed. That's why a document like this is important. That's why kind of knowing some of the ins and outs of these documents is important. Knowing these guidelines that they put out for us to view is important. Are the FIA governing the sport of Formula One, the teams and the drivers, marshals, everybody included, correctly? And are they being penalized as so? And when they are not, because we've seen it several times, it looks bad, especially if it's a slam dunk. I don't even know if you realize the verbiage you put in your document exactly matches the verbiage here, but your findings are the punishment that you have assessed does not. So yeah, that is where I am at with that. So yeah, that is very interesting. We will see what happens this weekend. We got Friday tomorrow. We're going to be in free practice, qualifying, all of that stuff. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a pretty good race weekend. Hopefully it's a pretty good race weekend. Like I said, one of our shorter circuits, I think it's got 3 DRS zones. So I don't know. We'll see. It's under 3 miles, I believe, as well. So we'll see what happens. Don't forget also, today is the 26th. Tomorrow is the 27th. The movie comes out. They had the premiering last week for the drivers and everybody else. Looking at some of the trailers, I was a little bit more excited than as more trailers got released. I kind of have lost a little bit of that excitement. I am not capable or able to go to the movies right now and watch it. I will have to wait till some time elapsed for me for my own personal reasons. But I would like to know if I can get my hands on a copy, if I can actually find a way to watch the movie legally and support the movie. I'm hoping that a streaming service tomorrow might actually provide us with the ability to watch it. Because, a lot of movies these days are happening on streaming platforms immediately. They're not waiting. They're not just putting them in the theater. They're actually letting them be streamed for a fee in your home. So I'm hoping that also might be the case. Mechanic Mercedes says, peace to the fam, here to defend Charles. There's no reason to defend Charles, brother. We're not even talking about Charles Leclerc today. We're talking about penalty point guidelines released by the FIA. So you don't have to defend them, bro. You're okay. You can take the day off, do some push-ups. You'll be all right, man. Okay, with that being said, good people, it is a race weekend. We will be live several times. I will see you soon. Stay safe, be healthy, drink water. Peace.